I appreciate when a superhero movie takes some big swings and takes some risks to jump out of the box. And when you compare Wonder Woman 1984 as a sequel to the 2017 Wonder Woman before it, this movie is chock full of super big swings. And most of them pay off, in my opinion, but I think it's more than fair to tell you right up front to brace yourself for a very different kind of sequel that's hardly anything like the first one. And I think for some of you, that might be a turnoff, but let me discuss with you why this movie worked for me and why I do consider it a strong follow-up in this franchise. And as you can clearly see, I came dressed for the occasion with no shame. Wonder Woman 1984 was hands down my most anticipated movie of 2020. So that in mind, why don't we jump right on into my review? But no worry, this will be a non-spoiler review. Now, a major reason this film is tonally different than the first one is because we take a huge time jump from the grittier, more grounded superhero film set in a World War I setting to a lighter, bubblegum superhero film set during the colorful and nostalgic decade of the 80s. And this film plays up the 80s like it's nobody's damn business, but I think most people won't realize it goes beyond just the clothes and music and technology of the 80s, but also in how this superhero movie actually interacts with the audience. There is a cartoonish quality to a few of the action scenes, some of the dialogue and character beats that are very reminiscent of other 70s, 80s superhero film classics, like the Christopher Reeves Superman films, for example. Now, that's not to say that this film feels dated or cheap or campy, but it embraces the more fun, feel-good, comic booky type tone as normally found in classic comics or nostalgia 80s fare. And for some, that tonal shift and complete 180 compared to the original Wonder Woman might be a bit jarring. But if you can embrace this film for stepping out on its own and giving us a new side to Wonder Woman that we haven't seen before, I think you're going to have a good time with this movie. It's not like the first one, but that doesn't make it a bad thing. Hands down, the easiest thing I can say about this film that is better than the first one, in my opinion, is Gal Gadot's performance as Wonder Woman. This is easily the best I've seen her in this role, even though I've loved her and her performance ever since the first day she appeared on screen in all of the films that she's been sprinkled in throughout. To me, she is Wonder Woman. She is Diana Prince, and she embodies the role so perfectly that I argue her iconic performance and ability to become this character so well is just the same and just as memorable as, say, Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. It's like Gal Gadot was made to play this role, and she plays it brilliantly. She's proven she can handle action scenes like a boss, and she is also charming as hell, but it's her inner struggle and moments of emotional distress where I felt I saw more layers in her performance of Diana in this film, and she continues to be a shining light for this franchise. Chris Pine as Steve Trevor is and always will be the yin to Wonder Woman's yang. The chemistry between those two people are impeccable. Probably my favorite on-screen, superhero type couple throughout all of the current slate of superhero cinematic film. Chris Pine's comedic timing is always sharp, as usual. He's so funny, and even though I can't go into how his character is able to return in this film, because it's genuinely a surprise, as we could all see from the trailers before even seeing it, I thought the reasons for his return made sense, and it flowed naturally for me. As for Kristen Wiig as Barbara, aka Cheetah, I gotta say I was impressed and completely on board with her performance from start to finish, honestly. We know she can play awkward and funny, or shy even, but I can confidently say that she played her cards well and believable enough to evolve into a formidable and complex villain. I do take issue with a handful of lines that were a bit hammy, and I do wish we would have gotten maybe another scene or two to develop her character more, but overall, I thought she brought her A game. I really did. She surprised me. I liked her dynamic with Gal Gadot very much, and any qualms I may have had were easily outweighed by the pros, in my opinion. Pedro Pascal, as the more central villain or antagonist of the film, is also quite formidable, and I appreciated that he was also a three-dimensional villain, like Kristen Wiig's Cheetah. However, I think he was given some of my least favorite beats of dialogue. He overacted a little bit, and the hamminess of his villain lines leaned a little too far away one way for me than I would have liked it to. Just a few too many times, if I'm being honest. But I still think he was an improvement overall from the villain in the first film that we saw, and it's easy for me to see and appreciate Pedro Pascal's performance in general because I do see him giving it his all. Now, one big thing I will say about this movie is that it is a lot lighter on action scenes, especially when you do compare it to the first one. And with this movie clocking in at 2.5 hours, there isn't much action as you might think. I mean, there is some, but not as much as you might want. And maybe this will cause people to lose interest at times. But for me, I thought the character building and story evolutions were interesting enough where it didn't take me out of the movie. But I do think they could have used maybe a little extra jolt of energy within the first hour just to help balance things out if I had to nitpick the pacing. But I do think it makes up for a lack of action with some heartfelt character moments and necessary character development that I certainly did appreciate. And like I said earlier, this is a bubblegum superhero movie. It's not dark and gritty. It's not supposed to be realistic. It doesn't depend on logic to explain everything. And it's not at all like The Dark Knight in terms of just groundedness. It's playing up with the style of 80s and comics. It's animated, it's fun, it executes because it can, and doesn't always explain logic behind things because it doesn't really feel like it has to. And some people might not appreciate that and not care for the fact that it is more of a bubblegum superhero film, but this is the type of film they set out to make. They want to pull at nostalgia, they wanted to make it lighter, with similarities to Richard Donner's Superman, I'd argue, and I commend them for taking those risks because it is a huge step outside of the box and a complete 180, as I said, from the first one. This movie has its own identity. It's a standalone adventure. It's not meant to be a bridge to another film, and I'm perfectly happy with that. Sure, there are some slight pacing issues, especially with the first half, and it might be lighter on action than the first one. And yes, there are moments of cheesier dialogue that I could have done without. But this movie did make me cry, and it did touch upon emotional beats that I did need that resonated from the first one. And it did improve upon the first one with more interesting dimensional villains, and you just can't beat the amazing on-screen chemistry that Gal Gadot and Chris Pine do share. And I also have to say that there are a couple surprises that had me giddy and smiling, like a fool, from ear to ear when I saw this film. This movie has so many cinematic moments, and ones that I can instantly recount in my head that I already just can't wait to watch over and over again. In the end, I do think that the first Wonder Woman is stronger as a film overall, but this next installment in Wonder Woman 1984, it took risks and it took big swings, and I respect the hell out of them for that. It's clear to me that Patty Jenkins gets Wonder Woman. She directs with intention, with a vision. She loves this character, and I can tell as I watch these films, and it makes me love them that much more. Wonder Woman 1984 showed us something new, and I commend them for the big swings, and it left me just as excited to see where Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot take this franchise next. So even though this film isn't perfect, it's still one hell of a good time. I'm going to give Wonder Woman 1984 an A-. And that's my review of Wonder Woman, everyone. I couldn't resist. Thank you all for tuning in with me. I'm curious if you've seen it. You can now stream Wonder Woman on HBOMax for the next month. I already can't wait to watch it again. Feel free to leave your thoughts and opinions down below, but please don't list any spoilers for those who haven't seen it. As usual, thank you all for tuning in. And until next time, I'm Ryan Baby, signing off. Bye, everyone.